फास्टेस्ट क्रिकेट स्कोर अपडेट्स या सबसे डिटेल्ड स्टैट्स,
क्रिकेट के अंदर बाहर की खबरें
या हेल्दी डिबेट्स,
सबसे एक्यूरेट एनालिसिस
या फैंस का क्रेज, सबके लिए एक ही प्लेटफॉर्म, क्योंकि क्रिकेट मतलब क्रिकेट नेक्स्ट।
हेलो एंड वेलकम, स्वागत है आपका क्रिकेट नेक्स्ट पर। मैं हूं सौम्य कपूर। We woke up to a very sad news this morning of Salim Durani ji passing away at the age of 88. Kabul-born Durani played 29 test matches for the country from 1960 to 1973, in which he scored more than 1,200 runs with 107 50s and also picked up 75 wickets. To talk more about his life, career, journey, and flamboyance, I have with me Ayaz sir, senior cricket journalist. Welcome to Cricket Next, Ayaz sir.
Thank you. Because I mean, full at 88 old point life on off the field also. It's a life.
Yeah. Guess there's some connectivity issue with there's some internet connectivity issue. So talking about Salim Durani, he played 29 test matches from 1960 to 73, scored more than 1,200 runs, picked up 75 wickets. He was living with his brother Jahangir in Jamnagar, Gujarat, and had undergone a proximal femoral nail surgery after he broke his thigh bone in a fall earlier this year. Uh, he passed away today morning at an age of 88. Uh, he was part of some very famous series for India. He played alongside some greats uh, of Indian cricket. He was known for his flamboyance. He was known for his styling. He was known for his style statements. He was known for his six hitting, maximum hitting abilities on demand, and he was someone who was kind of player who walked the talk. Salim Durani was a cricketing legend and institution in himself. He made a key contribution to India's rise in the world of cricket. On and off the field, he was known for his style. Pained by his demise, condolences to his family and friends. May his soul rest in peace. The Prime Minister of India has tweeted this out. Uh, apart from that, talking about his career, his span as a cricketer, uh, वो कुछ कुछ बहुत important fixtures का part थे for the Indian team in Test cricket. Talking about his first class career, he played around 170 first class matches and scored more than 8,500 runs, which is an amazing stat. Apart from that, he had scored 14 centuries, bagged 484 wickets with 21 5-wicket hauls and two 10-wicket hauls in that. So a brilliant career. And PM added in his tweet, Salim Durani ji had a very old and strong association with Gujarat. He played for Saurashtra and Gujarat for a few years. He also made Gujarat his home. I've had the opportunity to interact with him and was deeply impressed by his multifaceted persona. He will surely be missed. The PM added further in his tweet. Salim Durani passed away today morning at an age of 88. He had played 29 test matches for the country between 1960 to 1973. Former India coach Ravi Shastri wrote, easily one of the most colorful cricketers of India, Salim Durani, rest in peace. Well, yeah, I mean, the flamboyance he had, the impact he had was just amazing, was just impressive. The way he used to hit those sixes on demand, the way he used to walk the talk, that was simply amazing. Talking about his international career, 29 test matches from 1960 to 1973, Scored more than 1200 runs, picked up 75 wickets, a left-arm orthodox player, and with that we have Ayaz sir back with us.
Sorry, Swami, I lost you. I think these are the perils of technology. But here
Yeah.
I am back again. Yes. I was.
Yeah.
I would briefly hear what you said about Salim Durani,
So
and
in the first place, I just want to ask you your first experience with him, your first encounter with him. What was it all about? Because in the morning when I got the news, I was really sad, and at the same time, I was just imagining in my head, ki I want to talk to Ayaz sir about Salim Durani ji, and just understand how he was. And here I got a call from
so
my producer that you have to do a show.
well, I mean, look, I knew him quite well, or I got to know him quite well, over the years. So from the time I became a cricket writer, one of like most of us growing up with such enigmatic and charismatic players around you, you want to make it a point to meet them. But my
Yeah,
first sight of Salim Durani was actually in the first Test match that I saw ever in my life, which was
yeah,
1964 at Brabourne Stadium against Australia. It was a match that India won. He didn't do much in that match, but yet he was when you sat in the stands, the
yeah,
buzz everywhere was about a few players, Tiger Pataudi being one and Salim Durani being the other.
yeah, yeah,
So, he was in my consciousness even back then. Then I
yeah,
saw him in the match against West Indies in 1966-67,
yeah,
which
yeah,
featured in Sir Garfield Sobers, in my opinion, the
yeah,
greatest cricketer who has ever lived. And
yeah,
Salim Durani made an impact in that match. I think he
yeah,
got a couple of wickets, and he also
yeah,
made a half century. I remember hitting him I remember him hitting a six, which
yeah,
in those days was a rarity,
yeah,
unless you were
yeah.
a West Indian or an Australian. Indian players
I
hardly
was I
ever
was watching
hit
one of the
sixes.
videos that had gone viral on social media about him hitting the six, and he was such a clean striker of the ball.
Yes, he was as very sinewy, and he didn't dance down to spinners. I
Yeah,
think one of the is going around on him
yeah,
hitting
yeah,
for a six in
yeah,
the City match. In fact, that was the match in which he hit sixes on demand, and he got to be
yeah,
celebrated as
yeah,
Mr. Sixer. You know, but before that, I mean, if you look at his record in domestic cricket is very impressive. In Test matches, it
yeah,
might
yeah,
seem for those statistically inclined कि क्या किया है 25 टेस्ट में 1000 रन बनाए 75 विकेट लिए. It's not no great shakes, but actually it's
yeah,
not about the stats. As Mark Twain famously said once, there are lies, damn lies, and then there are statistics. So if you
yeah,
just go by the stats, you might think he was a modestly talented player, but actually he was not. By if you speak to players who played for and against him, or along with him and against him, and if you got to meet him and discuss cricket with him, you'd have realized the man was a genius. He's won,
yeah,
as we all know very famously, that India beat the West Indies in 1971 in that
yeah,
series,
yeah,
when he
yeah,
went to West Indies under Ajit Wadekar, and it was two deliveries
yeah,
bowled by Salim Durani,
yeah,
which turned the match
yeah.
in India's favour. He gets
I
Garfield
was
Sobers and he
reading
gets
about
Clive
that.
Lloyd.
Yeah, I was reading about this incident. So he went to the captain a day ahead, an evening ahead. He said, "I'm gonna get Sobers and Lloyd. Just give me the ball." And he did that. He was someone who was, who used to walk the talk. That kind of a player.
Yeah. You know what? By that time, 1971, he was not the most favored child of Indian cricket. I
Yeah,
mean, they
yeah,
packed the C team with a lot of experienced players, so he went there.
yeah,
Other spinners
yeah,
had come in. Bishan Singh Bedi as a left-arm spinner. There
yeah,
was, Prasanna, Venkat Raghavan.
yeah,
I mean, Chandrasekhar. These were the guys who were, top of mind where spin bowling was concerned. And I think
yeah,
Salim Durani personally didn't fancy being fourth choice spinner. So when he was on the tour and
yeah,
he sensed that, look, you're up against the likes of Garfield Sobers, Rohan Kenai, Clive Lloyd,
yeah,
Steve Kamako, Brian Davis, a very formidable batting lineup. I think
yeah,
he
yeah,
impressed on Ajit Wadekar as captain that somewhere he
yeah,
should be given a bowl. And against left-handers, both Sobers and Clive Lloyd were left-hand batsmen. And he had
yeah,
worked it out in his mind that he could get them out.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
these were
yeah,
terrific, these were great batsmen. Lloyd still work in progress, but Garfield Sobers, the greatest batsman, the greatest cricketer in the world.
yeah,
And then, so he sussed out in his own way how he could do it, and he got the
mm,
ball. Wadekar trusted him, and
mm,
he got those two wickets and just turned the match around, and as it happened, the series around. It's not that only Salim Durani won the series. Of course, don't forget Sunil Gavaskar 774 runs,
Making his debut.
Dilip Sarvesai 642 runs. But
Yeah.
that magic or two magical moments came from Salim Durani.
Yeah. And sir, what was this thing about the slogan that went, no Salim, no test? Just give our viewers and me as well the insight about that incident.
Yeah, I mean, look, so 71, he was in a way a key factor in India beating the West Indies, but he wasn't chosen to England the same year, 1971. And by 1972, he was virtually ignored by the selectors. There was no way that they were even looking at him. And this was a home series that was being played against Tony Lewis's team. And Tony Lewis's team won the first test at Delhi. Then India went on to win the next and the next. Finally, I think they got him in for the fourth test match at Kanpur, where he played a breezy knock. That's what he used to do. Or one of these, maybe the second match where he played a breezy knock, picked up a couple of wickets. By that time, the bowlers who were obviously doing well for India were Chandrasekhar and Bedi. These were your prime spinners, and of course Prasanna. But come Bombay, that was the last test of the series, and the selectors decided in their wisdom that they didn't need a spinner, another extra spinner, and they had enough batting strength. There was Gavaskar, Vishwanath, Wadekar, Engineer, and so on. But the people were really upset because they wanted to see this big hitting guy in action. So posters went up all over the city in Bombay. No Durani, no test. And under public pressure, our public protest, the selectors included him. And as it turned out to be his swan song. He didn't play a test match for India after that. But in this match, he hit sixes on demand and he achieved iconic status for hitting sixes on demand and being known as Mr. Sixer.
Yeah, I just feel social media at this point of time is just overhyped. People had a lot of power then of the slogans and the banners to turn things around in their opinion. So moving on, what was his connection with the Bollywood? Like he was a brilliant personality. I mean, I was just watching I was just looking at his pictures of his young age. I was just blown away.
Very handsome man, as you might expect. He was a Pathan in that sense. And and as his career was ending, I think he was B.R. Ishara, if I remember correctly, was the producer and director who got him into movies or made him the offer of. And by that time, I think Salim Bhai sensed that he's not, his career was more or less over. He was still playing domestic cricket and he was doing extremely well. In fact, one of his best seasons came after he finished Test cricket, in domestic cricket. But he got this movie with Praveen Babi called Charitra. And it's quite interesting you raised this thing because I was in Pune around that time for the marriage of a cousin in Pune. And it was at a place, a hotel which had a lawn. And we went for the reception and guess who was staying in that hotel? It was Salim Durani and Praveen Babi because the shooting of the movie, parts of it had taken place.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know him much then, but I went and kind of shook hands with him and took his autograph. And then, of course, I got to know him professionally extremely well once I joined the profession.
Yeah. And one of his instances I was looking at, like I was just reading an incident from a game against England, if I'm not mistaken. It was against spinner Gifford. So he just hit him over mid wicket with a cross bat, and Gifford goes to him and says, why are you hitting with a cross bat? Just go with a straight bat. So it's like, go and bowl. We are just 20 runs away from a win.
Yeah.
So someone who was up for it कि मैं जाऊंगा वहां लड़ूंगा भी और रन भी बनाऊंगा विकेट्स भी लूंगा.
Finished him or along with him. There'll be so many such stories. He was not cocky, he was not arrogant, but he was very astute and he was very self-confident. He was very full of confidence. He could analyze extremely well. He could pick out flaws in batsmen like this, very quickly, and then aim to get them out, get them dismissed. There are several such stories in domestic cricket, and of course, hitting the bowlers of their legs because he was such a wonderful timer. And in those days, hitting the ball in the air was looked down upon, was frowned upon by coaches and the
Yeah.
selectors and the the board officials. But here was one guy who would do it quite frequently and without fear, because that's the way he played. I mean, in the 60s, I can tell you, in the 60s, he used to play league cricket in Tamil Nadu, what was
Okay.
Madras State then, for a club team or for a company team. And I dare say he was perhaps the most well-paid cricketer in India then, because it was still the amateur age.
Yeah.
The money received from playing for India was paltry, but
Yeah.
companies could, if they paid you 4,000-5,000 rupees a month, it was like a king's ransom you got.
Yeah, definitely. So, sir, before we wrap this session, I mean, I genuinely feel jealous of the previous era of people. You guys had the chance of meeting these legends in person, knowing them so closely. What if Salim Durani, sir, would have played in this era? How big a cricketer would have been? He would have been.
He, I mean, if there was an auction, he would be in the top 4 or 5, I would think, where the money is concerned, if not the highest. He was not only a brilliant all-rounder, but he was also star quality. I mean, people now look
Yeah,
for creating brands and stuff like that. So he would have
yeah,
been, I mean, he would have been a lodestar. He would have attracted the crowds, he would have attracted the sponsors, and he would have won
yeah,
matches. I must tell you this
yeah,
before we wind up one story, that
yeah.
once he finished with his cricket, I found out one day I was working for, I mean, I did a story for the Illustrated Weekly of India in 1990.
Okay,
And I got to know that Salim Durani was staying in a small, rundown, ramshackle hotel on Chowpatty in Bombay,
okay,
Chowpatty Sea Face. It's called Aram
okay,
Hotel. So I went to do a story. We did it in black and white pictures. And I went and saw
okay.
him. He was living in a room. He was really on hard times.
Hmm,
In a
hmm.
room which was no bigger than a balcony. And
Okay,
he was a tall man. So if you put a bed there and a tall man sleeping on it and a bag, there was nothing else that could go into that room.
okay, okay.
But I went and met him. He was, despite
Yeah,
having fallen on hard times, he retained his good cheer.
yeah,
He was a very generous man.
yeah,
He lived like, he was a soldier of fortune, lived beyond his means, I would say. But
yeah.
having spoken to him, I did a story, I was stepping out, and the rent was, if I remember correctly, 25-30 rupees a
Okay, okay.
small, like, stopped at the
Yeah,
reception. I asked the guy, and probably the owner would know. And I said,
yeah,
Salim bhai, he's hit, doldrums, he's hit very bad times.
yeah,
How is he managing? How does he
yeah,
pay? So he turns
yeah,
around and tells me, मेरी औकात है क्या? Say it in Hindi. He says, मेरी औकात है क्या कि मैं सलीम दुरानी से पैसा मांगू? I mean, do I have the standing and the temerity to ask Salim
yeah,
Durani to pay for it? And that
yeah,
gives you an idea of the stature and the status
yeah,
and the love he enjoyed amongst cricket followers. Obviously, that receptionist was a great cricket lover. And he said, if
yeah,
Salim Durani, how can I ever ask him for money, however bad
yeah,
times he may have fallen on?
yeah. Thank you, Ayaz sir, for joining us. Your insights are very, very interesting. Whenever जब मैं सुनने बैठता हूँ तो मेरे को तो बहुत मजा आता है, even if I'm in the backdrop. So it's great talking to you, and yeah, we've lost a great cricketer, great man who lived on to his will, and he was a brilliant character. I mean, what a guy.
I
So
think,
thank
look, he lived a long life, he lived a full life, and he lived a life on his own terms. And the
yes,
joy he provided is,
yes,
as you've served the net and you speak
yeah,
to people, you realize what a
yeah,
engaging cricketer and what a
yeah,
charismatic cricketer he was. So all
yeah.
I can say is, well played, Salim bhai, and you know, play the
Definitely,
same kind of innings there.
definitely. Thank you, Yasser, for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And all you guys out there, keep following us on our social media handles, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and do subscribe to our channel, YouTube channel Cricket Next, क्योंकि हमारे पास ऐसी सारी लाइव अपडेट्स हैं, सारी ऐसी स्टोरीज हैं, सारी इंसाइटफुल कहानियां हैं, तो उसके लिए आप YouTube Cricket Next YouTube चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए, उसके साथ साथ बेल आइकन दबाइए, क्योंकि नोटिफाइड रहना बहुत जरूरी है, क्योंकि क्रिकेट मतलब क्रिकेट नेक्स्ट।
फास्टेस्ट क्रिकेट स्कोर अपडेट्स या सबसे डिटेल्ड स्टैट्स
क्रिकेट के अंदर बाहर की खबरें
या हेल्दी डिबेट्स,
सबसे एक्यूरेट एनालिसिस
या फैंस का क्रेज, सबके लिए एक ही प्लेटफॉर्म, क्योंकि क्रिकेट मतलब क्रिकेट नेक्स्ट।